if we talk like this, the audio will be a bit better. Because
Sweet Caroline.
I'm right up in its grill. I'm up in its face.
We'll see how long that lasts, you big disgrace, kicking that can all over the place, singing, we will get a copyright strike. My singing is so on point.
And this is where all the echo comes in and stuff, and it's annoying because it was, audio and, yeah.
Audio is the hardest thing to get right, and that's why at the Hobby Hoarders podcast, we work so hard to make sure that we get it right, even if we've just recorded an hour of footage that you may never see. Welcome to the Hobby Hoarders podcast. I am your host, Sam, believe it or not, Lowry, and I am joined by Matt Geary. Welcome back to the podcast. We were just chuckling over in the last segment a hilarious comment on the last episode of the podcast. A friend of mine, what was it he said? Can you remember what he said on the podcast? The comments?
Oh, about your beard, and that how you, if you were being held hostage, you should give them a sign like shaving off your beard.
So for the audio only listeners, yes. 8 inches of beard, or maybe even longer, 6 years of growth has lost, because not only did I lose that, but I also lost 16 kilograms of weight, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't. So here I am, beardless.
How many kilograms did you lose?
16.
16? That's fucking
My
awesome.
opponent lost 20 point something. We got reams of paper to represent it. I'll put a picture up on the screen to sort of show you that, because it was like a stack of paper about like this big. If you've ever carried paper, it's blooming heavy. So yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to lose 4 at the minute and stuff. Because I'm at 99. I want to be at 95. So,
the problem is if you change weight, then you won't confuse the Germans anymore. 99. Okay. Welcome to this podcast, the podcast about all things tabletop, or not, as the case seems to be some of the time. In this episode, not only are we talking about the fraud that is my face, but we're also talking about recasting. So, Matt, how do we feel about the topic? Do we have emotions about the topic? Are we emotionally invested? Or we don't really care? Do we have any experience with recasting that you're willing to admit on a podcast that goes out to 100 of people? I mean, probably is 100 of people combining all the sources.
Recasting is one of those things, isn't it? People do it. I have friends who do it quite regularly. I have bought recast stuff, China cast, as it were. Basically, I have Forge World stuff that I've bought, but I have bought China cast before. When one of my mates was like, "Do you want one of these? I'm getting this from China," and I was just like, "Yeah, go on then." And I think I'd like I don't remember what it was, but yeah, it's like a fraction of the price, but the quality's definitely not as sort of not there in some of them. But
it's one of those interesting points that you've just made there about it seems like everyone does it. Nobody wants to admit to doing it.
Yeah. The thing is, right? It's one of these things. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If everybody does it, then it causes problems for the supply of the original stuff, which means prices go up, which means we it's what's it called,
perpetuating cycle of misery.
Yeah, so basically we buy the price is too high, so we buy China cast, then they have to put the prices up because they're not selling as much, and then we moan about it, and then we buy China cast, and then it goes up, and it's going to get to a point where you are going to you're never going to put Games Workshop out of business, I guess. But the thing is, if everybody was doing it, you would, and there's a lot of people who have very strongly views on it. Like, I don't generally buy China. I prefer quality over quantity and stuff, and a lot of things I would prefer to pay more money for something I know it's quality than buying a cheap knockoff of it. It just doesn't sort of, especially in tech and things like that, I would prefer sort of, spending more knowing I'm getting.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't buy a computer from Wish, for example, because you just know it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
But you're almost giving us a summary before we've got even to the fight of the matter, the meat and potato. So let's first start off with trying to work out what is recasting, what in our minds is recasting. At what point do you cross that line? So recasting in its purest form would be taking a thing that already exists, that someone has spent money on manufacturing, research, overheads, paying people's wages, and they have made it for a fraction of the cost because they've just copied it. Is that where we're going with what is recasting? Sounds like a game show question. What is recasting? Or would you have a slightly different definition of what recasting is?
No, I think you're right. I think that's probably what you would define as. You get like a lot of the China cast ones because they used to make it over there. They used to make a lot of the Forge World stuff there.
Really, I thought that was always in the UK, and that's why it was so expensive.
I think basically they have the molds over there and stuff for some of the Forge World, the actual Forge World molds.
Really?
They used to.
Because because that was going to be one of my my sort of questions is, with certain companies like Wish, the reason that you get them so cheap is not because they're a recast, but because you're buying direct from the actual creator and supplier. And it's actually not a recast, it's actually the original, but you're buying it at a fraction of the cost because you're buying it straight from the supplier. I don't think I agree with that. I don't think Forge World and Warhammer were ever manufactured outside.
Pardon me,
there's actually a shortage of the books right now. You know, that's why the books have been pushed back and back and back. And it's actually a very specific part of the book. It's something like all of the paper and stuff is made here, but the covers is made in a different country, or something ridiculous like that. Or
Poland, probably.
The sleeves. It's something absolutely ridiculous because the vast majority of the product is produced here. I think it's all the models are produced here, but the boxes are produced elsewhere, and so the boxes are holding everything up. It's actually costing Games Workshop quite a lot of money because they've had to rent extra storage.
Now I heard something that they had at one point in time they did do it in China, and that's where they had a lot of and so when they cancelled it, they had the mold still there, and then that's why you could get certain things like Titans and things like that. So they could recast them and stuff there. Well, not recast them, cast them there because it was sort of they had the original.
Molds.
But obviously, as they've gone along, they make them in house. Now I could be completely wrong. But that was I heard.
The reason that this sort of topic is coming up at the moment is you may or may not have heard that CBD, one of the biggest China recasters, has basically been hit with a cease and desist. The lawyers of Games Workshop have somehow presumably reached a deal with the Chinese government. I have no idea how you enforce UK law in China.
They tend to not really sort of pay attention. There's a lot of fake stuff, and they kind of go, oh, well.
Well, basically what's happened is they've had to close, and they're saying, look, all of your orders that you've placed will be fulfilled, but now we're no longer going to exist. But people immediately put on the post all the comments with, they'll have closed down and sold the mold to someone else, and that someone else will mysteriously be the same owner, the same employees, the same casters. Because what are they going to do? They can't chase them down in China, can they?
AliExpress and things like that. You just sort of get. So there's a lot of
AliExpress is like, in theory, and the reason it's allowed to run is in theory you're buying from the supplier, so it is legitimate.
Well, there's loads of people who there's like loads of people who make a lot of money on Amazon, and it's because they see what's popular on Amazon, see what's selling well, and then they go and buy it from the people who make it, obviously, in AliExpress, in China, and they get it for a fraction of the cost, and then they sell on Amazon and stuff, and then they undercut the other people and stuff, and that's where they make a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, it's even better than that, isn't it? It's drop shipping, isn't it? It's called. It's one of these fads that they're always saying about get rich quick. You hold none of the stock.
Yeah, it goes to Amazon.
Order from the people, and it gets shipped directly to the person.
Yeah.
Which is just hilarious, I think.
Yeah.
Although I'm gonna put out here just as a quick idea. You know how all the YouTubers have their thing, and you know if you're listening to this, don't you think about stealing this? Do you know any companies that sell pre-packaged make kits? For example, let's say you wanted to start building some terrain yourself, scratch building it. Do you know of any companies that sell a box that's literally make your own terrain, and they would have like the coffee stirrers already in it, the basing material already in it, like that has like little packs where you're still building it from scratch, but it has all the materials in one place?
I know some of the model kits you get like flock and stuff with them, and you get sort of bits and pieces. Like a lot of the can't remember the name. They do it for like Flames of War and stuff, but they come with flock and things like that. But
I'm just wondering if that would be something that people would be interested in. I know you're feeling on terrain, but if I was going to make a building and I saw there was a kit that was just like, here's all the stuff you need for making a building, go crazy, I'd be really tempted.
Yes, though, man. It's like with terrain. The thing about terrain is that, depending on if you're going for 40k terrain or sci-fi terrain or fantasy terrain and stuff, like you literally can use anything in your house and make good terrain out of it pretty easily. So you don't really need it in a box to make, because you can literally just get some polystyrene from your.
I mean, I could literally take an army man and put milliput on it and have a space marine, but I won't, will I? Because it won't look as good.
No, but yeah, the thing is, you can buy like the MDF terrain. The MDF terrain, you can get is really good. All you need to do is stick some of the, if maybe they sold the MDF terrain with a bit of weathering stuff or something like that. But as a product, it wouldn't be something I would sort of because I've got a lot of that stuff
You've
already.
not seen it. You've not seen it, have you?
I haven't seen it, but I just don't know.
But maybe it's because it's a terrible idea.
I don't know if it's a terrible idea. I just don't know. It's like, for me, like,
if they start popping up now, though,
the MDF terrain either comes already pre sort of kind of what was it, foreground, which are unfortunately closing.
I know,
down,
it's got it, and they were doing the pre-color stuff.
Yeah, and they'd already.
Did you pick anything up?
No, I didn't. I've got a load of stuff. I've got loads of their thing mill built.
If you ever want, I know you don't love terrain building, but they were selling a whole bunch of like nice like stencils.
Thing is, I love terrain. Don't get me wrong. Terrain sort of I like, but I've got so much terrain now that I will never need terrain ever again. I've got sci-fi terrain, I've got fantasy terrain, I've got historical terrain. I do not need any more terrain in my life. I've got too much of it. I've got that. See that? That what's meant to be for wheelie bins out the back at the front there?
Yeah.
That's full of terrain.
Wow. Nice.
It's just sort of like, I don't need any more terrain. I've got the cardboard stuff from what's it called? Battle Sector or whatever. I've got sci-fi, I've got fantasy, I've got MDF, I've got stuff I've made myself. I've got so much terrain.
Now you're just flexing.
I could literally supply a small gaming store with the amount of terrain I have, and it's just like, I just do not need any more terrain. So when you're going, let's build terrain, I was like, no, no, I do not need any more terrain at all and stuff. It's like it gives me heart palpitations to think about more terrain. I'm just like, oh no. Like, I love like the idea of making terrain. Like, I had this, I started making, and I threw it out because it was massive. But I always wanted to do this like big sort of kind of like throne room thing, and I had the best piece of polystyrene that I found. I had from a it was either one of my computers or it was like a washing machine or something, but it was literally, it had sort of like it looked like a room. It was rectangular and stuff, and I sort of made some pillars out of it, and I made stairs and everything. I had this sort of like big, massive, and I had a piece of thing that looked like a throne. I had this big sort of but it was huge, man. It would easily would have taken up like, half a board and stuff. It was massive, and I was like, I am never going to use that. I'm never going to finish this. As much as it's a cool idea, I'm not gonna. That's another thing. If I had my own gaming store, if we're talking, because we're talking about gaming stores, if I'm on gaming store, I would love to have like a big sort of like, diorama thing of something like Helm's Deep, or something.
Have you been to Warhammer World?
No, I've always wanted to go.
You've never been to Warhammer?
I've never been to Warhammer World.
Just choose a date and then just go.
Yeah,
it's like an hour and a half drive. I go to Nottingham all the time.
Maybe I will.
Just let me know.
Right, maybe I will.
It's a shame you're busy this weekend, because we've got a wonderful in the UK. We've got a extended bank holiday, don't we?
Yeah.
Thanks very much to the Queen
UK Games Expo on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, but I'm going Friday and Saturday and then selling what I buy on Sunday in Element.
And being very, very sad.
Yes, pretty
I was
much.
trying desperately to find a photo that is very, very relevant to this, because what it was is a friend of mine actually made out of cardboard an absolutely stunning replica of a Reaver Titan.
Oh, okay.
And it's so good that you could mistake it for the real thing if he painted it nicely. My question to you is that recasting in a way?
Because you're making one yourself?
Because you're making one yourself in a way.
No, because that's a part of the hobby, isn't it? Remember the first ever Rogue Trader, the first book, Rogue Trader came out. There was a part in it that showed you how to make a land speeder out of a out of a deodorant stick.
But you allowed to play with scratch built stuff. Is that a thing? Or do they have rules
games,
about percentages?
in Games Workshop tournaments, you're not allowed to have third party stuff.
What if it was entirely built by yourself?
Again, you can. It has to be Games Workshop.
Really,
Yeah,
even if it's built entirely by yourself.
If it's a Games Workshop ran event,
yep,
you have to have. It has to be like 90% Games Workshop, and if there's anything that's not, you have to let them know, and then they will either now even playing at Forge World, even at playing at Warhammer World.
Yeah.
They will. You have to play with Games Workshop stuff, which is
Okay.
understandable. But the thing is, like, so I'm the Praetorians, which I'm doing. Like the bodies are normal guardsmen stuff,
Yep.
but all the heads are third party.
Because I thought there used to be a percentage rule about how much your model was allowed to be.
Yeah, well, a lot of independent, a lot of the tournaments, independent tournaments and stuff like that, nobody cares, as long as it's got the same, as long as it's got the same base size and dimensions and things like that, you can do whatever. There was a guy I played once, guy called Dave. He turned up to a game with me. It wasn't a tournament, but it was a game with me. He turned up with Huey doing Louis ducks as riptides because he had them on the same base. So I was like, okay, right, no problem, right? The riptides, man. I was like, that's Huey doing Louis, and it was just like literally just ducks from his kids because he hadn't made them yet.
But did that devalue the game? Like, if he'd continued to do that, would it piss you off? And he was like, every time there was a new unit, like if he did it more than once or twice, most, would it start to annoy you?
No, not really. I don't think so, because it's about the game, isn't it? Like, I've seen that. Have you not seen that?
Yeah, but as we've discussed it, long length the game.
Yeah, well, if it was like everything was just sort of, if we rocked up everything and it was just sort of like, just ducks and things, and yeah, it would maybe, because you're just like, taking the piss. Oh, the cat decides he wants to kick off now, because that's what he does when I'm recording things. He wants to kick off.
So the question then is, if they are playing with those ducks because they can't afford the actual models, does buying recast actually become a little bit more acceptable? Do you think not being able to afford the real thing is ever an excuse for buying a recast?
Right, anyway, distracted by my cat.
So if someone can't afford the model, but they can afford the recast, does that give them any sort of right to buy it? Or would you say, no, if you can't afford it? When you think of the core things that are recast, is it the core line or is it the luxury items from Forge World? And then the question becomes do you, because you can't afford something, does that give you the right, obviously still very illegal, does it give you would you give someone more leeway? Or, is Forge World, which are quite often powerful variants, is it a kind of elitism in our gaming?
It's a very broad question. Issue you have with it as a person, all the things we buy are expensive. A lot of the stuff's expensive, and there are people who do not have the money to get these things.
Yeah.
Does that mean they have no right to have them? No, they should be able to have these things. It's just that they can't afford them. It's the question is, what is,
This is a luxury, isn't it?
It is a luxury.
You can't afford a Ferrari.
I know that. But if somebody could give me a Ferrari that was
Knockoff
a
Ferrari.
knockoff
I mean,
Ferrari.
you could get a body kit if you
Yeah,
wanted a body kit for your car. I'm sure you could
yeah.
get one.
I don't know if that's. I shouldn't have that. I couldn't call it Ferrari, and a lot of people who sort of have these China cast things. They're pretty open about having it as a China cast and stuff. Well, nobody asks any question because it's there as long as it looks relatively. Nobody gives a shit. It's just down to the thing about casting and recasting is down to the effect it has on the company, which then has knock-on effects on us as consumers. And is that a sort of kind of a circular thing, cyclical,
I mean, one of
cyclical
the
thing?
arguments that would be against that argument, your counter argument to a counter argument, is the fact that they were never going to buy it in the first place. That person was never going to buy the original. They could never afford the Manta, but they could afford the Manta a fifth of the price. So by them buying the Manta, they were never, in theory, going to ever buy the Manta
How do you know that?
because they can't afford it.
I know, but why wouldn't they? They might want it, they just couldn't afford it.
Well, this is the argument that we were having about whether or not they have the right to be able to play with that item. And again, remember, the vast majority of recasting is a Forge World, the luxury ones, not the standard ones. These aren't people that are complaining about the cost of a Land Raider. They're complaining about the cost of a Sicarian Land Raider for 30k, which now comes in plastic. Remember to support your local gaming store.
I'm
We're taking each argument about pro and against recasting one at a time. So let's just fight this one point yet. Does someone not being able to afford someone, but being able to afford the recast, give them any sort of more reasonable reason to do it? Or do you think it's still a no?
Well, you can't stop people from playing a game just because they've bought a recast and stuff. It's more down to the ethical side of it. Is it okay to do that? Which, if, like I said, it has that ethical thing. It's like you're buying something which then could have a knock-on effect on everybody else because of costs and things. It could get to the point if everybody's buying recasts, then the company goes under. But then
We're not going for recasting as a whole just yet. We'll summarize that for the end. But for that one particular point, what I will say is if a company allows homemade, decent proxies, then there is no excuse. Because you've made a homemade proxy, everyone understands what that model is. But if the company bans homemade proxies, the budget ones that would mean that anyone could play with a Manta, then suddenly I feel like that line becomes a bit more grey.
I don't understand. So
basically, the argument that someone that can't afford this model, the real one,
Yep.
is saying I can't drop $1,000 on it.
Yep.
But it's unfair that I don't get to use that model in a game, especially if it's powerful, just because I can't afford it. So they've then got two options. They can buy a recast for a fraction of the price, or they can build a proxy, and as long as they work hard at it, they make a nice proxy, they can use that proxy. That would not break any rules. It doesn't cost anyone any money. And it would mean that the underprivileged can use that luxury model. But when a company bans those kinds of proxies, that person now has two options: the full price model or the China cast at a fraction of the cost.
Yep.
So my question to you is, does in that scenario make it any righter, or are we still saying absolute no? I probably should have left this one because I think this is one of the more morally ambiguous ones than some of the other arguments.
You can't have people. I understand when Games Workshop first started and they had things being scratch built, it was because they weren't as big as they were. They were a small company and they weren't sort of kind of, they were just, it was an RPG and it was just effectively in the grand scheme of things. Rogue Trader was effectively an RPG. As they've got bigger as a company, if people start scratch building things and bringing them to games and stuff, they're not purchasing your items, which means you as a company are going under, and therefore people are going to lose their jobs and stuff like that. So they have to have lines, and therefore not scratch building whole titans and things and stuff, is is a thing. Now they can't enforce that in tournaments and stuff like that. I've seen people turn up, like a Manny Chima, who's like one of the biggest sort of is potential. I think he's first in the world now
Yeah.
for 40K. I've seen him play with Green Army men and stuff. I've seen him play
No.
I've seen
What
him
in a
play.
tournament?
I've seen him play with
This isn't a GW sponsored tournament.
as sort of he turned up once, I think, because he didn't have the guys he needed. I think they might have been sort of what are they called? Bolt action.
Yeah.
Bolt instead of guardsmen and stuff. Bolt action the same sort of size ish and stuff. So as long as they were same size, he's turned up with different minutes and they were okay. The guy Josh, who's from Team England, I played him and he had 7 Mantic flyers from Dead Zone.
But it wasn't a Games Workshop tournament, was it?
No, what it was a 40K tournament, but Games Workshop tournaments are they don't they so like the LVO and all the big tournaments are independents.
No, they're not anymore. LVO is not.
Is it not?
No, no,
Oh.
no, no. A couple of months back, it became the official tournament of 40K.
All right, so you can't rock. You
Yeah,
wouldn't be,
now
you,
there's the
you wouldn't be able to.
because obviously there was the changes recently where Games Workshop were announcing like their policy on 3D printing, and basically before it was kind of like, well, as long as 70% of your model was legit, then they kind of let it slide. Whereas now the sort of the hard line came out, and there was a whole bunch of discussion about whether or not they were banning any time you use printed or whether it was full models. And I do think that you shouldn't be able to rock up to an official 40K tournament with just a 3D printed army, because again they're putting on the money of that, and again tournaments tend to be loss leaders. You're putting them on to get people in to buy new models. You're not putting them on to
I know.
make money.
As again, it's down to in ethically you shouldn't because as much as
So in that situation, because you can't afford it, doesn't give you justification. You should be able to save up for it or play with something else.
you can still buy it and you can still play it. It's just you can't play it in official tournaments and stuff like that. You're going to play it. It. I don't think it's a very hard thing to sort of argue against because you're basically telling people who can't, who are not making a lot of money, that they can't have these nice things and stuff like that. And even if they have the chance to buy something that is very similar, they can't have it because, well, that's not official. You're not allowed that and stuff. And I don't think that's fair. But then again, you've got the other side of the coin, whereas like if everybody did that, then it affects these company and it all goes under and it affects all of us. So
I think companies have to be understanding. I don't think they need to be necessarily as understanding as Manticore. They let you bring whatever model to represent models at official tournaments, which I think is crazy. But
if they were a bigger company, I don't think if they were like Games Workshop, I think they'd change.
Yeah, perhaps.
Bear in mind, Netflix, right? There's the whole thing that's coming back to the bite Netflix in the ass at the minute, right? So they're turning around at the minute and saying you can't share your passwords, and then somebody shared a tweet that they sent out before they were a big company saying sharing passwords shows that you love so they've basically encouraged it at the start when they weren't a massive company and stuff.
Well,
and then,
I mean, they had that thing, didn't they, where they sort of got forced to bring out reasonably priced family packages in Apple, and I think that was a good thing. So my argument would be that if there are elite things like the special custodian tanks, if the person buys an existing custodian tank from the main line and does a bit of converting, I think that should be allowed at tournaments, because then you've got this 100% ironclad. Yeah, you can't afford the £200 one, but you can afford the £40 one and then spend some time converting it. And so I would say that would be the way of chopping off the argument of ever saying that someone's priced out of doing something.
you kind of do that already because you can get sort of, for example, you can buy variants of rhinos and predators and things like that. And what Forge World would do was, you would have a different turret on it, or you would have sort of things, and you can kit bash that and stuff. And kit bashing is still, as long as you're getting stuff from the other model kits and things like that, I don't see it, and even using green stuff, and you couldn't stop that because if I can make if I've bought a rhino and then I make it into a predator or a vindicator or something like that using other bits from other things, then I've bought that equipment, and green stuff, it's encouraged to sort of do that. A lot of Space Wolf stuff, you have to add fur and things like that. So yeah, I think that's legitimate as long as you've bought something from them and then you
Mm.
make it, you upgrade it
Well,
effectively.
this is what I was asking at the beginning. Is that allowed in tournaments?
Yeah, because you've bought stuff from them.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, I don't know. I've not been to any official Games
Yeah.
Workshop ones, so I don't know what their
I
lines
think if
are.
you make an honest goodness attempt and do a fair thing, then it's
Shall we
fair.
Google what Forge World, not Forge World, what Warhammer World's policy? Just really one of my mates works for works there, and I don't know.
Nice. I mean, don't say his name. You don't get him doxed.
Bear with me 1 minute. So Warhammer World policy.
Hashtag prepared.
Yes.
Hashtag professional.
Uh, Policy.
Hashtag I don't tell Matt the topic of the podcast in advance, so I might actually have a chance of winning these arguments.
Warhammer World policy on third party.
Hashtag proxies are okay if they're legitimate. Hashtag too many hashtags.
At the home of Warhammer, third-party miniatures are not permitted. Any models you use must be either Citadel or Forge World model miniatures. And here's the thing. All right, so you got right model requirements for events in Warhammer World. Playing exciting atmospheric games with painted miniatures is a big part of events in Warhammer World. Protect the experience for every player. All gaming events in Warhammer World have model requirements. These are standards laid down that we require every player to attend an event to abide by. So each model must be a Citadel or Forge World miniature. Each miniature must be fully assembled. Each miniature must be painted to a minimum battle ready standard, including bases. Each miniature must accurately represent its entry on your army roster. Conversion must be checked in advance with the events team to ensure they're appropriate for organized play. All miniatures in your collection must be Citadel or Forge World miniatures.
Okay, so the conversion one could cover a whole bunch of sins. So
Well,
that
see,
could be converting a
well,
standard version.
they've got a bit at the end that sort of explains that. So for all miniatures in your collection must be Citadel or Forge World miniatures. At the home, said getting creative with conversions. Generic parts such as plasticard, wire, brass rods are fine to use. But any cast miniature parts that's specifically designed for models must be produced by Citadel or Forge World, so you can't have 3D.
Ooh, that's a big change.
Yeah. Note this refers to actual miniatures in your collection. The requirements do not apply to bases on your models. Fully assembled. So let's see.
Because the thing is that
Conversions.
Golden Demon sometimes like purely scratch made models win.
Yeah. A conversion is considered any model that is not built as standard out of the box, therefore visually it looks different to how it was originally designed. A conversion can be something as simple as swapping the head on one model or another, or attaching parts of another model to the back of a tank or to a hero character, showing off trophies from previous conflicts and developing the narrative of your army. Simple aesthetic conversions like this don't need checking by the events team. However, anything more in depth will need checking. First of all, don't panic about this. We're very friendly and we love creativity and modeling. However, we want to make sure everything is clear for your opponents. There's nothing worse than getting to a final dice rolls in a close game and making a wrong tactical decision because you didn't realize that the opponent's model actually was. Is it because of the opponent, or is it because? With that in mind, if you're planning a conversion or of any of your army, take photos if possible and email them to us. We will then be looking to see if the model represents what you intend to use. I think it's basically see if they say it's real or not. There's a big difference between conversion and a proxy. For example, taking parts from a Coven Throne, Chaos Knight, and Darkspawn Knight to create some Blood Knights. The Blood Knights is conversion, whereas using Dragon Blades with a red paint job as Blood Knights is a proxy. Proxies are not permitted.
Okay, so I think that sounds like if you weirdly it didn't say anything about sculpting your own from scratch. It's pretty vague.
Technically, if you're buying, arguably, right, if you were a good sculptor, you could buy green stuff from Games Workshop and make a model because you've bought it from them,
Yeah.
and you're saying, well, it is what it is. I've just made it myself. I've used green stuff.
I think in a reasonable world, nobody's gonna have made an entire army from
No,
scratch. I think if you made
basically,
one model, they would allow it.
I wouldn't be able to use my Praetorians in a Warhammer.
Yeah, because it's too much. From
Because
third party.
basically all the bodies are guardsmen, but the heads, every single one of the heads, because they don't do pith helmets.
What if you had taken a head, chopped off the cap, and made all the helmets? Do you think that would be allowed? I think it would. But what if you'd sculpted the whole head yourself?
See, I think arguably you could argue that because I bought the models.
Yeah.
There's no third party parts.
Because there used to be, like I said, there used to be a thing that was like 30%. That was the rule. It was like 70% had to be Games Workshop and 30% not. And I wonder why they changed that. I don't know why they changed that. I'm guessing it's because of the rise of 3D printing.
Yes, the rise of 3D printing, and you can literally just sort of. But there's so many. They're going to have to. I don't know what they're going to do about it going forward and stuff. But this, 3D printing's getting insane these days and stuff. So.
And I would also love to see how would they tell the difference between like a fully 3D printed army versus you've added green stuff onto an existing model to make it look better. Be interesting. I don't know how they would solve it. I don't envy them that task. Okay, so the ruling is if you can't afford the legitimate actual model, either save up for it slowly or convert a cheaper alternative. Is that our conclusion?
No. That's the ethical side of it.
For official, if you want to play in official tournaments, because remember we had this argument about the difference between playing Games Workshop and playing in tournaments, and you were like, "Oh, they should be the same," and I was like, well, "No, they shouldn't." So let's stick to our guns on that. We made a decision on that.
Yeah, it's just a very grey area and stuff.
Version number 2. So I'll give you an easier one. Or at least supposedly it's easier. The model is long out of production.
Okay.
You can no longer buy it from the company.
Okay.
Is it okay to buy a recast?
A lot of people who buy recasts, a lot of people who buy old models hate recasts and stuff. There's like all of the old sort of old hammer posts.
Yeah.
I see on Facebook if there's recasts, there's people kicking off about it all the time and stuff because they want the originals and stuff. And I'm the same. If I was going to go for an old model, it's not going to be playable in the game most of the time. A lot of that stuff isn't playable in the game. So why would I want the recast? The only thing I would maybe get a recast of is maybe some old school Thunder Warriors or something if they didn't do or something like that, where I'd sort of, that being said, probably use Custodes as Thunder Warriors and add some different heads on and stuff. Recasting old stuff, because you're not it's for your own sort of gratification. And why not? They're not making any money out of it anymore and stuff, but it's sort of, they're not making any money out of it anymore. It's for you only, effectively. A lot of people don't want it. I would prefer, like, I've got all those Space Wolves and things, the old school Space Wolves and stuff down there. I wouldn't want recasts, kind of want the originals.
Well, let's pivot away because I think you're thinking of it in quite a practical way, but what if we pass into busts? Where you have miniatures like your lovely big dragon up there. I mean, presumably at some point, some of your busts, you can no longer buy them anymore. At that point, is it okay to buy a recast of one? Because there's no way for you to buy them anymore.
Well, it's because it's for your own personal use, and they're not selling them anymore, so they're not losing money out on it. Then no, I don't think there's an issue with it. If they're not making, the ethical issue is if it's a company that's selling it, and making money off it, you're stealing their IP. Whereas
but
if they're
what
not
if they
making
did another
anymore,
run of it at some point? Like, for example, Games Workshop now have done reruns of a lot of the Lord of the Rings stuff.
Yeah.
It's now made to order. But at the time, you couldn't get hold of it. So the only way for you to get it was buying a recast.
No, arguably you could say because it's still their IP, then you're still stealing it. But the thing is, if it's been ages and they're not selling it, then I think you could, arguably say, like, you're not, it might, but you're not making it anymore. You're not doing it and stuff. There's been a massive, it's like, think about it. All the epic stuff. So Epic Armageddon. You've got that group that we're on with all the epic things.
So gorgeous.
So many nice things.
I want a 3D printer so bad.
Yeah, and the thing is, but because they don't do them anymore and they haven't done them for years.
Yeah.
It's like there's no other options, and it's like people still want to play that game. They should totally play. They should totally do it, but they don't, and so that's the only option you have.
Yeah.
And for me, unless you go for some of the old school stuff, which just doesn't, it's old school, looks good, but you've seen some of the sculpts, even for like 6 millimeter stuff. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like, I don't know why they won't do it, but
I managed to pick up some in a charity shop, and my biggest fear is how am I going to get the globbed lead paint off of them? I
no.
have no idea, and like when the models are like this
And they're
big,
plastic as well, so you can't put
um,
it in. You can't put it in certain things because it's just going to melt.
I need to just
Yeah,
sacrifice one of them.
yeah.
But that was a big thing for me. Is like obviously I was lucky enough to manage to buy some of them secondhand for a reasonable price for what they sell for. But it would have been I could have got 10 times the army going for like a 3D printed one that someone had printed for me. You
Yeah,
know.
but I don't, because Games Workshop are currently, I think they will eventually do it because they're going back on everything else.
Nostalgia.
They will do it. They will do it. Like, everybody's like, they're not bringing back. They're never going to bring back squats. Like, I had arguments with mates that they're never going to bring them back. Even people in Games Workshop, guys, they're silly. They're not going to do it. They're back. They're going
They're
to.
not
They
back.
brought.
No, they're not back. The Voltan have come back.
Oh no, no,
Yeah,
Sam! Oh no, Sam! Did you not see the squat miners that came out from Necromunda? They're called squats.
Wow.
Yeah, so they are back. They had the squat mercenaries from Necromunda. They now have boxes of squats
There
that
was a
say
really
squats.
there was a really cool bit of fluff, and they're talking about it, and they were talking about the guns of the Tau and how they were made by this specific race.
Yeah.
This is new fluff, so I think every Tau player is going, oh please, because there's a race of squats or Voltan, whatever
Yeah.
you want to do, which they have a different name, so we don't really know if they're a separate race at this point to the clans of Voltan or not.
Yeah.
They're not called clans. What are they?
Um,
The word. It's such a strange word. Leagues.
League
League
of
of Voltan.
Voltan, yeah.
Yeah. Okay then. So I feel like that was a gimme. I feel like I give you the first one came out to be harder than I thought it was going to be, and so I've given you a gimme. So now it's come round one. I think you're going to have the same response to the one we've just talked about. But what if it was a limited edition model? Okay, so you could buy limited edition prints of paintings, you could buy limited editions of paints of pictures, and of course you can buy limited edition busts, which I imagine you have at least. That Mother of Dragons, I'd be very surprised if that's not a limited edition model.
Yeah.
How do you feel about when someone recasts that model?
Um,
So now it's available for a fraction of the price you paid for it, but also arguably by allowing a cast, it's devalued yours.
yeah, but I'm not. If it was like, they might be limited edition by the amounts of run, but they're not in my mind. Limited edition is something like that, which is
Yeah.
one of a kind, or that, which is a one of a kind. And
But if only 100 are made, and they guarantee that there's only ever going to be 100 made, part of their selling point is that only 100 people in the world have them. So part of the value of the piece is in its rarity, and by recasting that, you've devalued it. Because do you think honestly people tell the truth when, like, can you say with 100% certainty all the nice models that you've bought are definitely originals and that you haven't been duped in any way with buying a recast?
I don't know. I don't know. And I think when it comes to models where you're painting them yourself, it's different than something that you've bought, like one of my sister's art prints and stuff like that, which is a limited run, and people have copied her stuff and sold it off as their own and stuff, and it does devalue it because But the thing is, you've got sort of signatures, and if it's a limited run, for example, that pulse rifle up there, the pulse rifle, it's a limited run pulse rifle made from the molds from the actual pulse rifles and stuff like that. There's like, I think there's like 500 of them and stuff. They've got it, you've got all this on. If it's something like that, you'll have authenticity stickers, you'll have authenticity paperwork and things like that say that is what that is and stuff like that, so yours is. So if somebody does go out and have a fake one, that's fine. They've got a fake one, but yours is legit. So you've got specific things that prove the provenance of your item and stuff like that. So fine, they can have that, but it doesn't devalue yours because you've got the paperwork to prove yours is. Now these doesn't come with paperwork because they're just models.
Surprised me, like a bust that size, I would almost have expected to come with a.
You get like, obviously there's the box and things like that, but it's just
Because even when you buy the like X-wing pieces from what's the company called? X-Wing Armada,
Oh,
Fantasy Flight.
yeah.
They come with a little token of authenticity,
Yeah.
so you can actually see it. Because at one point it was the best-selling war game in the world.
Yeah, and then they've gone and
4K.
changed the rules for the third time, and everybody's kicking off.
Well, they kicked off the second time too.
Yeah.
This is the thing, we've discussed this before. If games don't evolve, they'll die out.
Yeah.
In the same way that singers are forced to evolve. But yeah. So you're of the opinion that, well,
if it's limited edition,
buy it.
if it's limited edition, you can prove it. Therefore, if anyone wants to sort of make a fake of it, then it's up to you and stuff. So it's like,
and you'd be very wary if someone said, "Oh no, I've lost the piece of paper."
Yeah, it's like, well,
like,
is it real? Is it limited edition? Well, if you can't prove it, then no.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one then would be quality. There have been times where, well, to be honest, what I can give you from my own experience is that we put in some ridiculously large orders from Forge World. We bought things like, I wish I hadn't sold all of mine. I had such gorgeous models. Termacan, who's this big, he's called the Maggot King, and he came on this big lizardy dragon thing. It was amazing. Still got the book for it. There was the Forge World Chaos Emperor dragon, like this big. Each wing like weighs like 2 kilograms of pure resin. And we bought a whole bunch of other stuff. And some of the pieces were appalling. They were so bad that we made a big list, a big complaint, sent it to them. And to be fair to them, I think 90% of our problems, they sent us stuff to fix it or replace it. Like on one of the bodies, the mold shift, it was like out by like that much.
Yeah.
It was stupid. And we were like, this is ridiculous. And another one, the resin was so thin that it was like crackling on it. So the question becomes is it possible that a cast can be better than the original? And B, does that make it okay? Now, this isn't just theoretical. Instead, it is show and tell. Now, I would love to say that we have your lovely pieces, beautifully painted, but it's in pieces. So I was really hoping to go, here is Matt's gorgeous built. But this is your official Lehman Russ, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It is.
It's not. It was painted easily about 9 years ago. Not even that. Sorry.
Well, I was going with the cast is gorgeous
yeah.
rather than this. It's very crispy. So to be fair, I don't actually see any issues with this, which kind of undervalues my question for this. Wow, he's got an axe like buried in his back. Oh no, it's like strapped on. So that's really nice. Now, I have a friend. Let's call him Big Tony. And he was doing a naughty thing. And he asked me if I wanted to join in on the naughty thing. This is Lehman Russ. So you've not seen this. You know your original. You know how good the quality is of that. I want you to look at this one and let me know if the quality is... I mean, like I said, that your quality is absolutely gorgeous, so I don't know how much this is going to do. I was kind of hoping that yours might have problems with it, based on my experience of buying pieces where I have had issues. But could you tell that that is not legitimate?
Well, same. See,
as someone who's bought a lot of Forge World, the things that I would watch out for is A, the color's slightly different. B, the when you buy Forge World, have you ever noticed the fact that you get tons of like resin like barricades, I want to call them? I'll need to put a picture up on screen just to show people what I'm talking about. But you get huge amounts of wedges. I have bags and bags in my attic because they're too good to throw out, but I'm not really sure what to do with them. Whereas this one didn't come with that. But what about the quality of it? What I will say is, I think it might be slightly smaller than yours, and I wonder if that's something to do with the process of the casting. Let's see. Is there any size difference between the two? Because I think that's another way that you could sort of spot it.
I think, man, I'm certain this looks... I'm going to have to Google the stuff, because I think China had... they used to cast these, and that's why these are good quality, because this...
Maybe this is a pretty modern model.
This isn't modern. This has been out for... Prosper came out... let me see.
You're about to make me feel really old, aren't you? I was going to say like 5 years tops.
No.
Really? Oh my goodness. I suppose I had... when I had mine, I had Horus, I had the Night Haunter. I had Angron, which were some of the first ones. God, no, you're right. That would have been because I've been here 6 years alone. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This is gonna be
it's
awful.
6 years.
6 years, okay, for
6 years.
Lehman Russ. But how far back for who was the first one? Was it Angron? I feel like it was Angron might have been the first one. Was it
No,
Logar?
the first one was Horse.
Horus? No.
Yeah,
Horus wasn't the very, very first one they brought out.
yeah.
Mm,
Pretty confident it was the one of him standing on the main one of him standing on the sort of kind of eagles. I'm pretty sure that was the first thing. But so yeah, that was 6 years ago. This model came out.
Okay, so that was about where I thought he was released. Angron. Angron
Oh,
was the
was
first model. And when do you think that was? When do you think that was?
it? 2014.
10 years ago. So 2012.
Oh, okay.
I was actually slightly worried. I thought you were going to say like 2009 and I was going to have a wee fit.
Well, I'm gonna have to Google something here.
So my question then is if the if the other if the recast is better quality than the original, I mean, I think the biggest damage that Games Workshop had, Forge World specifically, in years is, have you watched Squidmar's video regarding the Manta?
I've seen it on YouTube, but I've not watched it.
3 of them, I think he said 150 hours because it was so warped in places, so bent, so twisted, and ready for the tabletop, bought a Manta as well when they had the same issues. And see if you spend £1,000, would that not drive you crazy if your thing wasn't perfect?
Just
Oh,
sorry.
oh.
Forge World production moved to China 2010. That's why I'm saying. So that's
Oh.
why I think a lot of and that's things like this.
So you think that might be a genuine thing from the genuine model?
It might have been in the actual molds because I remember people telling me
Yeah.
that some of the Forge World stuff that is good like the Reaver Titan and stuff that I
Yeah.
had and stuff was pretty much the same as the Forge World
Interesting.
one because they originally did the molding and stuff, and that's what I'm saying. So the reason that is quite good quality is because it's from
It's from the original mold?
from the original mold.
Okay, so that brings up a whole other point then that I wasn't even going to ask about, because if that's true, then that opens up the question of things like Wish, Alienware, and maybe this. When you're buying direct from the supplier, does that count as a recast? Does it? Where does
They're not the supplier anymore because they took it away from them. It's just they kept.
Oh,
molds.
so they brought it.
Oh
They
yeah,
brought it back to the UK.
They don't have them in China anymore because the thing is they did have it in China originally.
Okay.
Not originally. They moved it to China obviously to cut costs, and then they've brought it back. They brought it back, but obviously those companies have kept they've kept the molds and then have started selling on AliExpress. Hence why you get certain things like Deathcore Krieg for Quite My Mate. Got a load of China cast Deathcore Krieg stuff. You can get Lehman Rust, you can get sort of a lot of the older Primarchs and things like that because they were the original molds.
Okay, I think that's a slightly different question to what I was wanting to ask you. But if we go back to, let's say that that these are produced in China.
Yeah.
You know that they're produced for Games Workshop, and presumably Games Workshop presumably you would think would have some kind of exclusivity deal with them. You would hope. But let's say you do, if you're buying from the same place that produces them from Games Workshop, is that well, I mean, it's not by the definition of recasting, but is it allowed? Like, is Wish and Alien AliExpress, are they legal? Like when you buy from the supplier?
But again, if you're buying an IP that they don't have the right to sell, then technically you're stealing that
Okay,
IP.
so they don't have the right to sell it to you. They're supposed to only sell it to that one person.
Yeah, well they'll have basically agreements with a company.
Yeah.
And say, Games Workshop will say you can cast for this, but you have to, it's official. You sell to us. Then whenever they've turned around to them and said, right, we're taking it back in house, they would have said to them, right, you need to destroy the molds and you can't sell these on. And a lot of them would have turned around going, okay, we're going to do that. And then they don't. And then they end up on AliExpress or something like that. And you know, that's still technically illegal because it's, you know, it's not official. You are buying stuff that isn't official Games Workshop stuff, even though it is technically,
Yeah,
it's not.
yeah.
So
So that doesn't make it any better. It's still being very legal.
yeah, technically, yeah.
Because for certain things, like for example, if you want to buy apples in the supermarket, you go to the supermarket, you buy a bag of apples. If you go directly to the farmer, is it the same rules? If they have an exclusivity deal where they're supposed to only sell to that supermarket, they then sell an apple to you. They break in the.
Yeah, technically, yeah.
Wow. Crazy, because you never thought about that. So suddenly farmers markets have a very dark turn, don't they?
That's obviously it's
The
cash in hand, isn't it? So there's no
Exactly.
paperwork.
The vast majority of them probably have
Yeah.
that. It's funny they were talking about ways around this. Two-factor authentication, people. Always make sure you've got it on. Someone's trying to log into my account, the cheeky gets.
Oh, okay.
And it's going, hey, was this you? No. Okay, so if the quality is better from a recaster, that still doesn't make it any better. Still not allowed to.
No, technically no.
Yeah, because molds get worn out. This is the thing. You can get really unlucky and you can be buying like the last model from a defective mold.
Yeah.
And I think if you challenge it, I think the company has a responsibility to fix it. If you're not satisfied with it, they should take that back and then give you one from the fresh mold. I think a lot of people don't do that. And when you think about the Manta, I'm sure he said on it, but I think only like 300 of them have ever been sold. So you can pretty much bet that that's still the first or second mold. So of course it's going to be getting worse and worse. I swear sometimes like the original mold must just be rubbish, because I've bought stuff where it's literally just slipped. You know,
Yeah.
I don't understand how that works. Maybe it's when the tops of the molds have like slipped like this, rather than the actual things don't line up.
I
Laziness.
hate resin stuff, like resin models. You know, molded plastic for me. Like everybody used to be all about metal. Like I remember, like we used to have to be this really elitist, so it used to be about metal sculpts and stuff. But you think, like, you look at the like into these guys. I just don't understand how I used to paint metal stuff ever, because like it just scratches so easily.
Yeah.
The details crap. Whereas
Varnish
now,
is so important.
you know, now it's just like you get sort of so much detail from plastic stuff. Resin just looks a bit. Man, do you remember Fieldcast? You know, Finecast. It was so
I
bad.
think the problem with Finecast actually put everyone's mouth so bitter that people then would be like, no, I don't ever want to use resin again.
Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah, it was just it was brittle and it was bad. You know, the sculpts look naff. You know, plastic, especially now with all the different sort of like computer programs you can get with it. You know, you can see like that guy we follow on Instagram who does the sort of really small models.
Yeah.
He obviously 3D prints them. They're like really good quality and stuff for
Yeah,
the size
yeah.
of them and stuff. And it's
his
like
paint jobs on them are amazing considering how small they are.
yeah, so it's just like,
I
know,
see him put a quarter next to it, and I'm like, well, I don't really understand what a quarter is. Sometimes he uses cents, and I'm like, I still don't know what that is. I think a cent is slightly smaller than a 1p. I think.
Yeah.
I still can't really work it out. And even if you put it next to a penny, I still don't think I would fully appreciate how small that is until it's sitting in your hand. He must have like a macro.
It's like a
lens
1p. It's like a 1p.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so it's pretty small.
It might be between a 5p and a 1p even.
Yeah.
Which brings us on to our next one. That chap does 3D printing. So here we have a 3D print model. So Games Workshop had absolutely no influence on this model, or did they? Because at the end of the day, it's still their IP. So can you guess which character that is?
Yellow in it, isn't it?
It is indeed. It's Girly Man himself. So
the only issue I have with it is the proportions. His arms are people always struggle with what I find with proportions and Space Marines, and they've always got like really short arms, little sort of like they do it even in the paintings and stuff like that, and the arms just look completely out of proportion to the body and stuff. This guy's got slightly short arms, I'd say.
Is it not because of the ridiculously oversized pauldrons?
The pauldrons look slightly small. Well, this is the thing is, and
I've never worn an exosuit, so I couldn't tell you how the proportions would look.
It's
because, of course, the middle bit's flexible, isn't it? So he might have his arm bent at that point.
Yeah, it's just like you can. for me, that look, I don't know, to be honest, it looks
Because
like
the
his
thing
arms are
is
slightly
Games
smaller.
Workshop always, when you actually think about it, look a bit weird because they use heroic scale. The heads and the hands are all exaggerated size
Well,
anyway.
they've obviously the new Primaris and even the new biggies
30K.
for the 30K, they look slightly out of proportion. They look weird because they've got longer legs. They're true scale. The
Yeah.
pauldrons are slightly smaller and stuff, and they've done that with. I'm gonna have to let this dog out. And we'll start from that point because he's the Primaris and they've made the shoulder pads, so you can use shoulder pads from original Marines on your Primaris. It's the
Yep.
same size. They're true scaling everything, whereas everything was the old school Marines like these guys. Pads were a lot bigger than they were and stuff, and it just you're used to that. Whereas now everything is actual scale. They're true scaling Marines and they're true
Yeah.
scaling things, and so it looks odd because they look sort of what they should look like, but you're so used to them being overly exaggerated that it just looks strange.
Yeah.
It's like the new Space Marine 2 game that's coming out with Titus.
I'm so excited for
It,
that. I
and
love the person just popping them.
yeah,
You can just shoulder barge and just explode a grot.
but
Oh,
they've got like they're obviously Primaris, and you can
bits from
see
the
when you see the
skies.
things, you can see that the shoulder pads are a lot smaller.
Mm.
But it's true scale sort of thing. So it's like they're meant, and it looks odd because you're used to sort of Space Marines being really bulky, sort of kind of with
Mm.
massive pauldrons and stuff. So yeah, maybe it is. It just looks odd because it's maybe true scale, and that's what it is and stuff. But
So where do you think 3D printing sort of falls on this? So do you think it's got to be less evil than
it's the same.
recasting?
It's the same principle, isn't it? Surely.
You think it's exactly? I don't think I don't think it's is as evil. I think
Why is it? Because what's the difference between you printing it and buying it from somebody else who's printing it?
because you at least did some of the cost, you did some of the research and development. Admittedly, you didn't come up with the characters, but it just feels like you cost them a little bit less money because they aren't
I think you're
losing on their
clutching at straw. I
investment.
think you're clutching at straws. I think 3D printing is the same as
Recasting.
recasting something. It's the same principle. It's the same thing. You're stealing another person. They get around it by naming it something different
Yeah,
and sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
And that
Yeah, sorry, that guy's called the Region.
yeah,
He's in
region.
another
Yeah,
bit together. When I don't know what you're talking about.
the guys who do the succubus and stuff like that. They do a lot of space nights,
Yeah,
and they've got one for each of the Primarchs and stuff, which are like Celtic Warrior, which is basically Lehman Russ, and
yeah.
all these different ones, which are effectively the Primarchs but different. They used to do them; they don't do them anymore. But yeah. So it's just it's the same principle. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter if you spend a little bit more money on it yourself. It's
Mm,
just that it is. Again, it's just down to, are they making money from it at the time? Are they doing? If they're not selling like all the epic stuff, if they're not doing it, then personally I think there's no harm in it because
mm.
they're not making money from it. And if they refuse to do it, well, their loss. I think they could
But
make
that character does exist.
yeah, that character does
So
exist.
what about alternate sculpts then? Where does that fall in the sort of the
It's,
morality of it?
well, it's the same thing,
I
isn't
guess
it?
the argument is you could always have converted your own
Yeah,
into that.
yeah, it's the same thing. Still arguably the same thing, isn't it? Don't get me wrong, 3D printing's great. I think it's but it's one of those things that people go, well, it's more expensive, but you're biting the hand that feeds you and stuff like that. And then you
Yeah.
are going to get to a point where if everybody was doing it,
Mm.
these companies that you love, as much as you bitch about their pricing, will go away.
Yeah.
They won't exist anymore, and it'll be your fault because you've undercut them. So it's a balancing act. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of very much a case of like, you know, uh, if it gets too expensive, people will go towards doing that.
Yeah.
Especially when 3D printing becomes a lot more accessible, and especially you get the ones where like I don't. The reason I don't like 3D printing is because I hate that sort of those lines that you get in
But you
it.
don't get that in modern
Yeah,
3D
where you
print.
get
I
a
mean,
lot.
that one doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Because now it's the
Yeah,
panel goes into it, and yeah.
So that I like that
And
because
now they can print it in 8K.
yeah,
I'm still not smart enough to fully understand why that makes a difference. But
so you can get sort of like these things
thinner
which
layers.
literally comes out like this,
Yeah.
so it looks
Yeah.
real, natural and stuff. And once that becomes more accessible and easier to do and faster to do,
Mm.
then companies like Games Workshop and stuff are going to have to think of ways around reducing their prices,
Mm.
because people will just go, well, 3D printers pretty cheap these days now, and
But
this.
they've always had one of the things though, like with a lot of companies, they make the rules free and the models cost money. Things like Moonstone, where absolutely every bit of the rule is free, and then they ask you, we made you this cool game, can you buy our miniatures? And they make cool miniatures, so I've bought a bunch of their miniatures. So the question is for Games Workshop, they can't monetize their rules because they already did that. They've always had paid rules.
Well, you get free.
So how
you get
would
free
they?
basic rules, and then
They didn't used
supplements.
to though.
Yeah.
They've been better if
Yeah.
in current years with that. Because it's the thing, isn't it? You always want to try before you buy. One of the most frustrating things I find about the modern age of video gaming is rental seems to be disappearing quite. It's pretty hard now to rent stuff. Although
Yeah.
I was reading about a company that rents out PS2 games
Yeah.
and Sega games.
I mean,
now.
you don't need to rent because you got things like Game Pass and stuff like that, which is technically renting, isn't it?
Yeah, but you don't get to try the game you want to test. Like, for example, the God of War game, the latest God of War game, I wanted to. I didn't know if I was going to enjoy it. Turned out I absolutely loved it. There was no way for me to test that apart from watching someone else play and listening to their review. Do you remember the good old days when you buy a PC gaming magazine, you get like a disc and it would have loads of like...
Yeah, let's love that.
Why? In this day and age, it would be even easier to put out a tutorial, like a what they call demo. That's how long it's been. I don't even remember the word for it anymore.
You do get demos. You do, like, some of them do. Like Steam does demo games and things. You do get demos. I don't, for some reason, just don't really have any interest in demo games and stuff. It's not as big a thing as it was back in the day because there's too much choice now. Back in the day, there was a lot less choice when it came to games, so you were looking forward to things because I really want to play that game, and there's a demo coming out for the first level or whatever and stuff, and whereas now there's so much choice and there's so many different options on how to play things that I don't think demos are really important to people and stuff because
See, but how am I supposed to know? Because games will cost you like 60 quid now. How are you supposed to know how good a game is without doing
because
it?
people do reviews and stuff. There's so many YouTube channels of people playing it, and you just got by the time a new game comes out, you've got about 50 different outlets have turned around and said this is naff or this is great or this.
But then there's so many reviews that you don't know which one to believe anymore, and then you eventually give up.
Mm.
I do that with Amazon all the time. Like I'm trying to choose lavalier mics. I want a nice one, and I found one that I quite like. It's called a Rode microphone, and it plugs into your phone, etc.
Rode.
Yeah, and it seems pretty good. But you just don't know because if you go into the review section, there's both high and low.
You know what I do for reviews? I go in and I look at the worst review, and then I look at the middling reviews, and I go for you always get the top reviews, especially ones you're unsure about, are always like, oh, this is the best thing. It's like, has that been paid for?
Yeah.
Is that true? You go to the lowest one, and it's like, this, they didn't get in contact with me. This stopped working. This and stuff. It's sometimes it's just like a mistake, and they're giving it a bad review. It's generally the middling reviews that you get a sort of more honest sort of view on it and stuff. It's like, it's good, but of this or because of this, and so I tend to go for the kind of like the 3 or 4 star ones and kind of go, right, what is the little iffy things?
Interesting, because I'm still at that stage where I read like the 4 5 star and the 1 star. Yeah, and I don't really look at 3.
Yeah, you go for the middle ones, and you see, because they've got that sort of kind of middle ground. It's like, yeah, it's all right, but, and then you've got sort of a good balanced view on it, and you go, is that stuff that annoys them something that bothers me?
Yeah.
And is that coming up more often or not and stuff like that?
Yeah.
So I'm just sort of, that's where I go through. I tend to go for the middle view and stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Although I was reading something that I've definitely been party for, because have you ever looked and seen the bestseller icon and then gone, all right, okay, well, if that's the bestseller, I'm definitely going to check it out. But do you know what they do? They put you themselves in categories that make no sense. For example, if I was wanting to look up a mouse, I would look up and I would see a Razer mouse.
Yeah.
Good brand, good item, bestseller. Okay, fair enough. That might be the legitimate bestseller. Then I would scroll down and find the TRX P7 3000, and it would have a bestseller as well. I'd be like, whoa, so this is way cheaper and it's a bestseller as well. Then you click on it and you look at the category, and the category it is the bestseller in would be Nintendo Wii attachment.
Oh,
It's
right,
not a
okay.
Nintendo Wii attachment, but it's the best-selling mouse in the Nintendo Wii attachment
Right.
section.
I've never looked at that
Oh,
actually. No.
I didn't know. It was one of these shorts, it's like and subscribe for more tips. And I was
Okay.
like, I might actually follow because that's a pretty good tip.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah. Think
But
about
to
it.
come back round to it, the reason that I feel that 3D printing can be slightly different is your purpose in with what you're going to do with it. So that model there, I actually have no intentions with anything of it. It was given to me free because I bought the other thing and the other thing was missing some stuff. But the other stuff that I've shown that we were talking about before with the diorama, there is no diorama of I can't remember what it's called, the Horus's Stars deck, the background
Yeah.
stuff. There is none, so I had to get that. Then the other two things is the Emperor obviously doesn't exist
I'm
yet.
trying to think of the name of the ship now. The Oh my god.
Fist of Horus.
No. The Oh my god.
The
No.
Barge of Despair.
Don't give guess because you're no. It's Oh my god. Why? How do I not know?
I know.
How do I not know the Vengeful Spirit?
Vengeful Spirit,
The
lovely.
Vengeful Spirit. Thanks.
Okay, and so the Emperor doesn't exist again. You could argue that I should have got like Rebooty Gilliman and converted his model because I've seen some really cool Emperor ones. Horus does exist, but I was making that for that display piece. It is not going to be sold anywhere. It is purely for our competition, basically. Which, I lost. I haven't finished it yet. Seems to be a pattern with me at the moment. I need a small one. I need a small win. I have actually done quite a lot to it. I've done all the reds, but the gold I want to do into a video, and because I want it in a video, it's
course,
so I'm just kicking myself.
The only reason I got this finished was because I was panicking. I was like, oh shit, I haven't done this in ages and stuff. So I was like, at lunchtime, I was sort of doing little bits, and it's not, as a standard with me, it's not fully finished, but it's
it looks awesome,
ready enough.
But my point is does that make it any more okay for me to buy the 3D print models? Because they're the scale that I want, and they're
if it's for
they're not for a game at all.
If it's for a diorama and it's a one-off thing, I don't think it's an issue. I think that's what 3D printing's technically for. If it's mass producing, it's different. You see, if it's for your own personal use, then I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If it's mass producing, then technically you're stealing. And then it comes into the ethics behind it, and like,
but am I stealing if I bought it? Am I perpetuating? Well, I bought that from someone. It didn't magically. I didn't make that sculpt.
Yeah.
I paid someone who had made the sculpt that then printed it.
That model is for sale. That you can buy. So you are technically taking a sale away from a company. So it is stealing. So
but I'm not using it for its original
You're receiving
purpose.
Stolen goods.
Exactly. Yeah. So the question is for making my silly diorama, should I have bought the, what is he now, £80 Rebooty Gilliman model to convert, and also bought the £100 Sanguine model and the £80
because
model?
arguably you're not looking for a Rebooty Gilliman, you're looking for the Emperor, which they don't do that model. Therefore,
but what about Horus? I'm not buying them to be a gaming piece in a game. And I have no intention of buying a gaming piece to be in a game because I don't no intention of playing that, which I'm sure I will.
There's a lot of argument. The argument is, if you can buy the Horus model, and you should buy the Horus model, but again, it's for your own personal use. It's for a diorama. People, I have lots of books. My dad had lots of books of model making from scratch and stuff like that, and people will make bigger versions of things. Like, I remember one of the art projects in school. One of the guys in my class, I was so jealous. He made a Space Marine, and he made like a statue of him. So it was so good. He did so really good job of it. And you wouldn't have been able to buy that. He made it, so it's for his own personal use. You're not sort of mass producing it or anything. I don't think that's an issue. It's when it comes to bigger scales where people are selling lots of them for people to make them, then that's the sort of kind of grayer area, because especially that one is that's there to be bought. It's not like the epic stuff where they're not selling that anymore. You can't buy that, so it's something. It's a very grey and muddy area. I'm not saying people who are doing it are wrong. Ethically, technically, you are. And then again, it goes down to if everybody did it, then it's going to cost. It could be an issue because it affects the company, which affects costs, which could make them go under, which means we're not getting anything like that again. It's one of these things. It's very hard to say don't do that because there's lots of things. Fact, people how expensive it is, how much money people people can't afford things like this. This is what I've talked about. About armies and stuff, that you shouldn't have to change your army to win games and stuff.
Yeah.
That you should be able to win games with the army that you have because you
Yeah.
spent a lot of money on it and stuff. And that's what annoys me about codex creep, is because it's not because for me, it's personally because I like the army and I don't want to start changing different
Yeah.
armies. It's such a massive
Yeah,
pain in
the best Space Wolf army at the moment is barely Space Wolves at all.
Yeah.
Basically, you take tons of intercessors.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the, I was looking at sort of currently sort of what are they?
You can't take Thunderwolf
Yeah,
Caravans
you can't
be
take the cool
competitive.
models.
You can't
You've got to go. You've got to
the
spam it.
werewolf
You got to
dudes.
have spam infantry and stuff like this. So all their kind of unique things
Yeah.
you can't use because they're not competitive and stuff. So it's like you have to either use that and spam things which are effectively what other space marine units have and stuff, or go to in the army. And even so, that's it. So it's like you spent a lot of money and all the units that you've got can't be used competitively.
Are Primaris in your actual codex, or does your codex say like, oh, anything in the Space Marine codex?
You've got Firstborn and you've got Primaris. Yeah, you've got both.
All right, in the Space Marine.
Yeah, you got.
Because I wasn't sure, because like with the Eldari, they combined all the codexes, didn't they?
Yeah, so what you've got is you've got a Space Marine codex, which is quite thick, and there's going to be a new 2.0 when it comes out, and it's going to have everything in one, and then they'll have a supplement.
Yeah.
For Space Wolves, for Blood Angels, for Black Templars, things like that. They'll do sort of a supplement that'll come out with some specific units for them. I am pretty confident come 10th edition they may phase out Firstborn Marines and then focus say, well, you can still use them 30k.
Yeah.
The scale's different now, so like this is if you think about sort of the old school Metal
What edition
Marines,
are we in now?
9th edition.
Wow. So 10th edition might only be like 3 years away.
Yeah, well, let's see. We've been going, started lockdown, so 3, you're looking a year, maybe 2 years away and stuff. But
wow, so not long.
So like your average sort of like Metal Marine would go up to his shoulder. His head would go up to his shoulder. They've made them slightly bigger. The new ones are about that, whereas Primaris are like that.
Really? They're that big? Jeez.
Yeah, so it's just sort of, they've they're increasing their size. They're true scaling them because there's always that thing that's just like, how are Space Marines the same size as Guardsmen? And it doesn't make sense.
I do like the new Primaris in terms of what I imagine is the Space Marine. If you ignore Firstborn completely, I like the look of the Primaris.
They're good, and I see what they're doing. It's just because they've been so many years of people buying, and I think they've realized, and they've been gradually creeping the size up, intermittently. They've just now went, okay, Primaris, true scale Marines, effectively. But they've got so many people have Firstborn Marines that they can't turn around and say you can't use them anymore because people will go, but I've just spent hundreds of pounds on these sort of models and I can't use them anymore. So they wouldn't be able to do that without a massive kickoff. But yeah.
Nice. So at the end of the day, we're thinking that recasting, where possible, always buy the original. If it's absolutely impossible, then it might be okay for personal use, but realistically, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, it's a very grey area. I say, you do you, but you got to think about repercussions on the hobby that you love. I think you got to think about it that way. It's like if you're using it for personal use, fine. If it's out of production, if it's something that you can't buy anymore, then fine, fill your boots. But if you're literally buying all your stuff from a 3D printed or recasting and stuff, you're
not supporting the hobby that you love.
You are not supporting the hobby you love and stuff. And that could, I know it's all well and good. Oh, it's just me or it's a few people, but if everybody did it, then it will have an effect on your hobby. And it's just one of those things. I understand why people do it because it's cheaper and money's an issue, especially now. But it's one of those things you have to sort of kind of ethics come into it and you have to think about it that way and stuff. It's like, in the end, they might be expensive, they might be a big bad company, but they're a big bad company that you want to buy stuff from and you want to continue to exist. And if
Mhm.
you don't support them, they won't exist much longer. Like, Games Workshop, are doing very well for themselves. But
Yeah.
if everybody turned around and went, "Oh, give it," they're not. They won't exist anymore, and then they'll be gone, and it'll be your fault because you've sort of gone against them. So
So we've talked about recasting home models. We've talked about 3D printing. The one that we haven't talked about is when you get a box of models and you have the pieces to make all the models apart from one part, the extra body part. So a great example of this would be the Vargeists, the big bat dudes that you can get for Age of Sigmar.
mm-hmm.
But they also make the kit, which is the big ghoul dudes. And the only bit you're missing, because literally the legs, the arms, the heads, all of that is different. The only piece you're missing is the middle chest piece. Is it okay to, for personal use, cast the body piece that you bought second time so you can actually make use of the pieces so they're not going in like a landfill?
Again, it's the same principle, isn't
You
it?
think it's the same? It falls under the same category.
Yeah, because you're going to be.
Because it really annoys me, like the waste you get on some of those kits.
But that's
I
how
mean,
they make.
literally
That's how
all
you.
they could do.
This is how they make you
Well,
buy.
make two different kits.
I know, but they make you buy separate kits so you can do that again. So it's
Yeah, but they don't, do they? They don't offer you the ability to buy just the chest.
Oh,
piece.
exactly. But that's because they want you to buy that other kit.
But then you've got more waste. It feels so wasteful to me.
It is, but that's how they make the money. No,
It
it's one of
doesn't
those
make
things.
sense to me.
And it comes down to the argument of like, are you sticking it to the man? Maybe
Yeah.
they need to change to sort of kind of do specific parts. Be a bit more. Are there certain things that they know are being recast quite regularly?
Yeah.
And make individual like those
Because they
chess
used to be.
pieces.
Do you remember when you used to be able to go into Games Workshop and they'd have a big bits box in the back, and either you could take the leftover bits or you had to donate to, I think it was a charity in Glasgow. You donated some pennies to.
I remember
go for the
going
bits.
in to Games Workshop in Manchester many years ago, and I didn't want the orcs part of the
Attack on Blackreach.
yeah, that was it. Yeah, box. Yeah, I didn't want those.
Which is funny because the Death Copters would still be worth a lot of money until like a year ago because they still didn't have separate Death Copter models.
I didn't want that. So
Yep.
what they did was they literally opened up another box for me and gave me both sets of Space Marines.
That's crazy.
Because other people would buy the orcs and they would give them the orcs and stuff. And they don't do that anymore.
No, heck no.
They wouldn't do that anymore. But at that time, they were just like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, same price. Here you go. Here's two sets of Space. And I got two sets of Space Marines.
Crazy.
For the same thing.
Absolutely crazy.
And I think that was a good, for me, because I didn't want the orcs and stuff, and I thought that was good. So
I feel like that feels slightly different to me than, and it's again different to say when you buy Space Marines, you get a load of extra arms and heads. I'm fine with that. It's in a specific situation where a kit makes two different things, and there's literally enough stuff for all of them apart from like one or two pieces, and it's like, well, why not make them as two separate kits? I'm guessing it's a cost thing. It must be cheaper.
Yeah,
which seems insane to me that it's cheaper to have one mold with loads of stuff on it than two separate molds with just the stuff for them. Have you got any kits like that are that extreme? I don't know if with 40k it goes to that sort of extreme. Maybe it's just a fantasy thing.
You get in 40k, you're always arms and heads. You got so many arms and heads left over. I've got a massive bit box full of arms and heads and even legs. Chest pieces are generally the bits that you don't get all of and stuff. But
I guess you could argue that ultimately that's the same thing. But let me just show you the one I'm talking about. So this is the Vargeist. So you get everything on there is unique to the Vargeist apart from the central body. That central piece that everything attaches to. And then let me show you the other one. Maybe this is just a particularly egregious sort of example of it. What are they called? This contains 3 round bases. Vargeist, Crypt Flares, Crypt Horror. There we go, Crypt Horror. That's the other one. So Crypt Horror. So that is the other kit. And you'll notice that the arms aren't the same, the legs aren't the same. Literally the only thing that's the same is the body piece. So maybe it is literally just I have an issue with that particular kit. Maybe the other kits aren't as egregious as that. But I just remember I just green stuffed. I just green stuffed the body, and I was like, there you go. I've got 2 amazing kits for the price of one. But I was just like, they don't sell the body separately to use that, because otherwise you've just got a bunch of bits.
Yeah, well, it's there's lots of things. It's down to sort of production, about sort of space. You have the tool molds and things like that, and it's all cost and stuff. You got to think these, everybody.
I suppose actually producing the sprue is probably the cheapest part of the whole process.
But yeah,
Fair enough.
I don't know. Just in general, I just think my dog's nemesis has walked past the window now. There he goes, trying to get out the window at the horrible Samoyed that walks past. And
A poor
dog.
cuddly dog that is never done anything wrong to him.
Yeah. Chill out,
Daddy, please come. Open the door. Let me out.
chill out. This is why he came through, and this is why he came through and destroyed my night, because that's why I close this door now, because when he can't get through there, he comes straight in through here and goes through that, and then jumps up in the window trying to get through.
Window. Well, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Hobby Hoarders Podcast. If you've enjoyed this, please do give us a like and a subscribe.
Sam, are we not gonna?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So
I didn't spend all that time on this just to sort of get it ignored.
So this 2-week challenge, which is once again sort of straddled out. Welcome to our 2 members that joined the Facebook group. Remember that if you want to join the Facebook group and join in any of these fortnightly challenges, which have not been very fortnightly, but we're doing our best. We're gonna sort something out.
Least, ladies and gentlemen. Get
the heck out of here. We mentioned pretty much always whose fault it was, and we'll know. But yes, so thank you for joining. If you want to join, it's the Hobby.
Let me stop this.
So to round out the podcast, of course, we finish off with what we've been up to, with a particular focus on the fortnightly challenge, which you may notice that once again, there is one thing sitting on the table. This is quickly becoming shame Sam for not doing anything. I promise you I will be better for the next one. This was quite a big one though, and you got a head start on me. Sorry, I'm making excuses.
Are like assholes.
I know.
Everybody's got one.
Okay, so what we've got this fortnightly challenge was the diorama. And last time we were here, you had finished all of the diorama apart from the miniatures. I can see that you've now painted the miniatures. Very nice.
Yeah, I did. Did I have the flock and stuff on? I did have. No,
you did. Yeah. So the miniatures is what you painted. How did you find it? So this was Lurtz versus Boromir and a bunch of dead Urukai.
Yeah. A lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Like I saw that guy. If you type in Death of Boromir diorama in Google, there's one that the guy's done. That's like, you can do that, but they're a lot smaller than you think. Because metal scratches so easy, so you'd leave it down. Anything on the ground, I would just scratch the paint off, and I really struggled with his eyes and things like that. So there's
Boromir's eyes, or Urukai's eyes?
Just in general, like the guy who did it, he must have had a really sort of kind of like, I was just like, I was getting that thing where one eye was over here and one eye was over here, to the point where I just stopped it. Getting the models and stuff. So that's a plastic one from he shouldn't have that armor, because obviously they're scouts, so they shouldn't have the armor, but that was a good position, so he's face down. And these are actual metal ones. These are all metal figures here, so they're quite hard to they were quite hard to paint.
It's funny because all of the models would have been metal back in the day.
Yeah. So it's just, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it looks pretty good. It's there are little bits and pieces I still need to do. I need to finish off the writing on the hair. I need to sort of do a little bit more on him. I've added blood, so I've got blood, so when you can see the blood splats coming out from when the guy's severed head and his arms and stuff.
It's a blood on Boromir's sword.
There is blood on his sword as well.
And you've got is that a pool growing around his legs, or is that the inside of his
coat? But he does have blood on where the arrows have gone in and stuff like that. So I'm trying to make it sort of as close as possible to sort of kind of the film and things like that, though we probably would have had more arcs around them. But yeah, I'm quite impressed with it. I'm quite sort of, I think it looks pretty good as my first diorama in a very long time.
Absolutely.
It's not looking too bad. My cursive is horrible, but so I'm gonna kind of, I'm doing it in the
No, I think
grey,
that
and
looks
then
nice.
I'm gonna do that in sort of maybe gold, and then so I'm just sort of that. I need to obviously put some hard coat on them, sort of some a satin coat on them, so it doesn't sort of
It's always
give
the
them.
scariest part of a
Yeah,
project is then putting the varnish.
yeah, putting the varnish on it. And yeah, I think for what it is, it looks pretty good. The hardest part I find was like there's the filigree around his thing again, that the guy who's done it, you think, oh, it's easy, that'll be
Yeah.
really easy to snot because it's so small.
Yeah.
And I was getting to the point, it's like I might use my magnifying things on them so I can kind of do it, but I was trying to do it by hand, and I was just like, do it. So I've done a sort of like, it looks good from a distance. If you zoomed in, it's not going to look as good. That guy's, those pictures, if they're zoomed in, you can see
Yeah.
every detail. He's done a really good job, which makes you feel like you can do it, but you don't. It's really
Well, that's
hard.
the thing as well, is in it, the Lord of the Rings was never the same scale as Warhammer or 40k. Like, we're so used to heroic scale where the hands and heads are much bigger, whereas these are much more to scale, and they're just in general, I think, smaller than the
Yeah,
standard sort of models that we're used to.
yeah, but yeah, I think it's looking pretty good. I'm quite impressed with it. Again, it's not completely finished, but it's as close as I reckon I'll do a bit more on that is where the arrows are. Um, Maybe a little bit more in his face than the arrows need. But the dead guys are dead and face down seem like to be all right. I'm gonna put a little bit of moss on these trees. But apart from that, it's pretty much done.
It looks really good.
Yeah,
Looks
so
really good.
I'm quite happy with it, to be honest. So it's my
I
first.
mean, rattling through these, that's what the third thing now you've got done from these
Yeah,
challenges.
that's
So
it. That's it. As much as they.
you're gonna need a cabinet just for all the stuff we finished doing these
Well,
comps.
yes, yeah, like I
You
said,
finished
I
these?
think every 2 weeks, depending on what it is, that I knew was going
that
to
one.
take me.
Yeah, that one needed the 4 weeks.
I needed longer, sort of, because I need time. Because what I do is I get to a point where I paint something, and then I need to take a step back, and then I lose interest, and then I need to get back into it and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, like this, like I did in 2 weeks, but haven't got back into sort of finishing off his claws.
And I
And
think
things
that's
like that.
absolutely fine. I think it's more important to have them to, tabletop standard plus
Yeah,
than it is to have them, golden demon.
yeah. So yeah. So I just yeah, I don't know, just need to sort of maybe something smaller next time. I don't know.
I stupidly went with mine that I wanted to have it as, because it feels now for the YouTube channel, it feels like everything I do hobby wise has to be recorded and has to be this and has to be that. And so whilst I've done quite a lot of it, the stuff I've done to it is stuff that I didn't plan on doing in a video.
Yep.
So there is stuff done. So I could have brought it, I guess, but then compared to yours, it would have looked like a pile of shit. I do plan on finishing it. But yeah, that was my problem. So I wanted to, I was like, oh, I can do him as the black model, and I do a tutorial on that. And I can do this guy as a tutorial on painting gold. And that's what I need to do. I need to stop thinking of our challenges as something that I need to record. They should be my fun stuff. I need to like split them rather than trying to shoehorn them into a video. Because I've actually taken a couple of weeks off for myself for my channel, just as a break, just because getting used to sleepless nights and trying to work around how to do that. And so my channel, I've sort of waited, and next week I'm launching again. I've got a new plan for, like, I've got these, every month will feature these 4 topics. So one video about a tutorial, one video about speed painting, one video about like talking about the hobby, and then one video about just a fun project that I want to work on, which may end up being these 2 weekly ones, maybe, but they won't be tutorials, because otherwise I was struggling with the channel and what sort of direction I wanted it to go in. I didn't want to be typecast as someone that only used speed paint, for example, by Army Painter, because it's just too little niche. No, I wasn't finding it as fun. So I think that's my excuse. This is my final excuse. So with that, I shouldn't be allowed to make any excuses for missing these. But
What's the next challenge going to be, Sam?
the next challenge is going to be the painting pot challenge, which is actually going on at the moment. People are still doing it for Instagram. Basically, have you heard of Elden Ring?
Yes.
Fantastic. Have you heard of Alexander the Pot?
Yes.
Alexander the Pot, for anyone that doesn't know, is a gigantic
Voiced by
urn.
what's his name from what's his name? He does Father in IT Crowd. He's also in that.
Irish guy.
No, what's his name? I don't remember his name. He's basically you know in the IT, you've seen the IT Crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know it's not the first boss, the one who jumps out the window.
Right.
It's his son who turns up at the funeral.
Ah.
I can't remember his name.
I didn't know it was him. That's cool.
He does the voice for that character.
So basically, he's a big Urn that wants to be a warrior because he believes that you should be anything you want to be. But being a fragile Urn is pretty dangerous in a world, in any video game world, let alone a From Software one. But basically, what someone did is they created a pot. Let me just get the name of it in the hashtag, so I'm getting this right. But they recreated that. Look at that, we've just got a whole bunch more follows. I mean, it's fantastic. You guys are following us on Instagram. It's one of our challenges was I had to set up the Instagram account. I think it was that way around. And I did, and you've all been following in droves. So thank you. I don't know where you're all finding us, but thank you for following us. But if I just find it, I've got the name here of the creator. So it was created by Morose Miniatures, and it was the hashtag Paint Pot Challenge. So yes, if you want to join in on that, obviously check out the hashtag Paint Pot Challenge.
You're talking to the side of your microphone again.
If you can also tag us at hashtag Hobby Hoarders Podcast, so we can actually talk about your entries as well. I mean, there is no prize, but you know, get famous here. We'll show you your images and we'll talk about them. But that's what it's going to be. You need to make that.
So does it have to be like a warrior, or can it be a paint? It can be a pot painted into something.
Anything.
As long as you use a paint pot.
So we'll have a little bit more of a look at the sort of entries that other people have done here, because I don't want you to get obsessed with how good other people's are. But the idea is just turn the paint pot into some kind of character. And you'll see some of them are crazily extravagant, and some of them are just really nice and simple. The original one is a beautiful conversion where the paint pot has arms, legs. The paint pot isn't painted, the arms and legs are, on a nice base. I think it might be a 40mm base. But how good are some of those? They're absolutely fantastic.
Okay, yeah.
But nice simple challenge. You've got 2 weeks. If you want to join us, you can either tag us on Instagram using either of those hashtags, or you can join the Facebook group. Thank you to the several members that have caught us out there. It's the Hobby Hoarders Partially Painted Facebook group. You can join us there, where we'll create an album where we post up each of our weekly challenges, and you can join in. Please do not feel like you have to join in with the most recent one. You can do a past one, and we'll happily chat about those as well.
Cool beans.
Lovely. Anything else from that? Nope, I don't think so. So from Matt and myself, thank you very much for watching us. If you've enjoyed this, do give us a like, comment, subscribe if you want. If you really enjoyed us, you could consider supporting us on Patreon, where you get an extra minimum of 30 minutes bonus features, as well as an extra full-length episode every single month. Normally where we do something silly, like talk about a random topic, or do silly little challenges like, can you identify this character in 60 seconds, that kind of thing. This week's footage was all about what we would do if we could have our own gaming space, what our gaming center would be like, and also memories of our first gaming centers, especially Element Games. And I believe we also called Byron out from Artis Opus a bit. So if you want to check that out, you can support us. And as always, thank you very much to all of our Patreon supporters. Otherwise, I have been Sam. This has been Matt. This has been the Hobby Hoarders Podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.